Good morning. How is everyone?
Good morning.
Okay, I feel like I have been running a marathon and I am behind. I know I need to follow up with you, Sarah, today. And then, Dee, you and I haven't talked in a while. How's everything going?
Life has been stormy.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's see. Naz is with us from Texas. Good morning.
How are you?
Thank you for asking. I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm good. So my dad had a massive heart attack over the weekend, and they did open heart surgery Tuesday morning. So it's been 10, 11 o'clock at nights, and then getting up to the hospital at 5 and 6 in the morning. But he's doing great. So he's hitting all of his milestones for recovery. So that was very comforting. So I came home last night. He's in Jacksonville, which is, like a 4-hour drive. So I came home last night and I'll go back up when he's discharged.
Which is soon, I hope.
Yeah, so they say it'll probably be a week that he's in the hospital. He's diabetic, but I think a week's 5 to 7 days is typical for triple or
Was it a triple bypass?
I was going to say triple. It was actually 4. They bypassed 4 arteries and then they put a clip in. So we'll see how it goes. But thank you, Naz. It was definitely scary. So.
Oh, I can only imagine the phone call.
Yeah.
The urge to get in your car and drive instantly, right? Like you're on the phone and you're like, hold on, let me grab my keys kind of moment.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
So my sister's here local to us. And so we got the call Sunday. And she has kids. I have William. Of course, we're like, okay, what do we figure out? So we got everything figured out on Sunday and then we left super, super early Monday morning. But all is well. So
That's wonderful. I hope he recovers well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's hard to see your parents age, but let's
Yeah.
see.
My mom's losing her memory and she's getting ready to turn 70 this year.
That's tough.
And so about 5 years ago, she started writing everything down, like her medication she started taking. And then I've just seen it progressing. So I understand the aging part. Like it's hard to see them go from, she used to be super mom to me, so I struggle with that. but I lost my dad a few years ago, so I completely understand. And he did have a massive heart attack.
Mm,
So, but I'll be praying for you and your family. I hope everybody makes it well and he recovers.
so, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's already 10:05. I'll give everybody just another minute or two to see who wants to join us while I get my screens ready, and then we will dive in. Okay, to be honest, I kind of forgot where we left off last week. I was trying to remember what we're supposed to be recovering today. But what I do want to go through is we're going to start from fresh, the contract to close process. That way, as we discuss it, when you guys have a question, on a different element of it, we can discuss it. So let's see. Sean, Sarah, we do have a couple brand new agents that just joined. I was hoping to give them a minute to hop on, but if it's going to be all agents who've been to these meetings a couple times, we'll be able to probably dive in a little deeper. So let's see. Okay, so before we just start walking through the process and the different components, does anyone have any specific questions?
No, ma'am.
Some. All right, so we're going to go to the Working with Buyers folder in Agent Resources, and I will go into the how-to contract to close buyer checklist. That is not what I intended to pull up. I'm reading it, but it's not what I thought I was navigating to. But this is a helpful document for you to use to kind of help you remember the milestones of the process. From submitting the document, reminding your buyer about escrow, reminding your buyer about the KW disclosures that are going to come from admin, submitting your new deal, talking to your buyer about insurance. There's a lot that happens, as you guys know, in those first few days, in those first 48 hours. So I feel like I say it a lot. The more you prepare your buyer ahead of time of what to expect, it makes that process go a lot easier. Someone has a question. I'm not sure who. Hey, Naz.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I just put a buyer under contract. I wanted to know, they're out of state, so they're moving to Texas. But I wanted to know, like, about the insurance. They wanted what was that report? They wanted the clue report. To get it from, so I requested it from the listing agent to get it from the seller. Hopefully they get it. If not, what is another way for them to access like any insurance claims on the house?
So the buyers wanted it or the insurance company?
The buyers wanted it.
That's a good question. That would be an Eric question. That's not
Okay.
actually a document that we necessarily do in Florida. But we have had insurance companies, and you Florida agents, you'll come across it sooner than later. insurance companies starting to look into past claims and wanting additional information. We don't have a formal document for it. It's just kind of you keep asking the seller the right questions until they may or may not be able to come up with something. But yeah, I would touch base with Eric on that because I don't want to steer you wrong.
Okay, no problem. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, insurance overall has gotten a lot more stringent as far as if they used to not really look into past claims on the property. Excuse me. In Florida, it used to only be sinkhole claims that raised a red flag, but now they want to know everything and they want to know how it was remediated. So if you come across an agent asking that, our typical protocol is just you reach out to the listing agent, or if you're working both sides, you get in touch with the seller, let them know the date of the claim, and then let them know what they're saying it was. And then it's just going to depend on what information they have available. I've had scenarios where it was even prior to the current owner owning the property, so they have no information on it. I've had scenarios where it was filed incorrectly and they were able to prove that, well, this is the claim we submitted and it was about the roof, not about a water leak or whatever it might be. So there's just some back and forth there navigating to get insurance answer they'll accept. And usually if you just, whatever you know, put in an email to them. Because, if 3 or 4 years is passed, it's hard to get specifics. Not everyone keeps receipts.
And now, will the insurance be able to pull that up on their end? And when should I let them know? Will the insurance, should I let them know to contact the insurance company for the house?
So my recommendation is always to, in the beginning of a contract process, go ahead and request insurance quotes. And you can from multiple brokerage, insurance brokerages or carriers, Assured Partners. So once you go under contract and you submit the new deal form, Kim will typically email you and the buyers and Assured Partners requesting a quote. It's more of an introduction email. So if the buyers want to move forward, they can reach out to them. Assured Partners, or an insurance carrier, they work all over the South, the US South. And they work with about 30 different insurance carriers. So typically they can get you something great.
Okay.
But I always recommend in the beginning, that way, if it is an older home, as soon as I get my inspection reports back, that you can send. In Florida, we have a 4-point inspection report that insurance requires. So you can send that immediately during your inspection period to make sure that you know what they want versus guessing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and see if I can get in touch with Kim today to see if she can send that over to them.
Okay. Yeah. And then I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Assured Partners is in Texas, Ohio, and Florida. That's one of the reasons we went with them. But if you could always touch base with Eric too, and he can point you in the right direction. Usually I'll get with Assured Partners, and then I'll also get with a local insurance broker that's just local to us, that a lot of our buyers in the area recognize their name, and I've used them for a long time.
Okay.
It's always nice to shop quotes so they can see different options.
Okay, perfect. So I'll do that then. Thank you.
And another thing to keep in mind, if you don't get insurance quotes in the beginning, when your lender is working on the property, they're going to go ahead and they have certain insurance companies that they'll basically run a quick quote with, but they're always going to estimate on the high end of insurance. That way, when they give you a loan estimate, it's not $500 short or whatever it might be. They usually pick the most expensive. So sometimes that can create an issue when your buyers, if they're super close with their debt to income ratio, they're right on the line of approving versus not approving. Sometimes the insurance rate alone can be a make or break. So it's good to go ahead and get those insurance quotes and then get that contact. You basically just put the insurance contact and the lender in an email, and then they do their thing. Because otherwise the lender is going to be basing it on numbers that may be higher. And that happens with HOAs can affect debt to income ratios, and property taxes can affect debt to income ratios. So when you're talking to the lender early on in the deal, sending them specific addresses to get a house specific loan estimate, it's going to make the deal go smoother, because it's much better to find it out before you go under contract that, ooh, this HOA is too high, or there's flood insurance on this property and it's going to push their premium too high to where they're no longer approved for this house. So the more we know early on, the easier the process is to get it closed, because we don't want to waste time working on houses that aren't going to work, right? We want to still, if we know a house isn't going to work, or we think, okay, I see this HOA is a little high, I see it has flood insurance, I'm going to go ahead and send the address over to the lender and say, hey, can I get a loan estimate on this? That way they can say, ooh, we can't go this high, or this is what their monthly payment's going to look like. And it lets the buyer make a more educated decision as well. That loan estimates also help when, say you're in negotiations and your buyer is stuck on wanting, say, $10,000. There's a $10,000 difference between what your buyer wants to pay and what your seller wants. Sometimes just getting the loan estimate at both, say you get one at $300,000 and one loan estimate at $310,000, so your buyers can see it in black and white that, oh wow, that $10,000 isn't going to change my monthly payment that drastically. We can still move forward on our dream house. So working with your lenders early on is always going to be helpful for navigating the situation.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and keep that in mind as well. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, Garrett, good morning. Welcome to Fortify. You're one of our newest agents, so I'm glad you were able to catch us. We were going over a couple questions and dipping our toes into the contract to close process. So we're going to get back on track with that. And I still didn't pull up the document I was wanting, so give me just a second.
So I'm new to just Fortify, but I've been an agent for many years. So I know the way how to do it through all commands. So I know that you guys have a different process on the team here.
Yep. So hopefully today will be a good introduction to what we do, and then basically your first 3 deals and any deal beyond that, I'm kind of like the Fortify hotline. You text me, you call me, hey, I got a question. The buyer said this. What do I do? The seller wants this. How should I put that in the contract? Where's the new deal link? Any questions that come up, I'm the person you call for that. So on Wednesdays, we rotate kind of through the different steps of the main tasks we handle, and then it's a time for us to discuss questions and troubleshoot whatever it might be.
And this is good because I'm potentially writing a contract within the next 2 days.
Great. That's awesome. Congratulations. So in your welcome email, you would have gotten a link to our Agent Resources Google Drive. And this is a good reminder for everybody, we have all sorts of information compiled here. If an agent has asked for it over the last 2 years, I try to put it here. So we have a really robust folder of document examples. We have stuff specific for commercial contracts, compensation agreements. We use a inspection contingency release. It's a specific document that Fortify uses when you get to navigating inspections. So anything you may need, a lot of times I'm pulling it out of here to send you the reference. But in Agent Resources, we also have training and tutorials. Now, a lot of this is migrating, I think hopefully you all have seen our YouTube channel that Haley has been working on. A lot of my videos and Sam's videos that we've created is migrating to YouTube. I'll always maintain it here as well, but that may be an easier way to find special or specific training and tutorials. But I have walkthroughs for navigating DocuSign, different documents, whatever it might be. So the big difference with Fortify is that you don't have to access Command essentially ever. We have Follow Up Boss, which is our client management system, and then you can get directly into DocuSign, and that's where you'll draft your contracts, get things signed, and then in our contract to close process that I keep navigating away from, you will see the steps of our workflow. So we have a working with buyers folder in here, different tips, information about mortgages, tenants, Fortify agent steps from showings to executed, buyer agent, that's in line with this info. But our buyer agent steps, so all the way from scheduling, you schedule it, you get your touring agreement in. When you have an executed touring agreement, showing agreement, or buyer broker agreement, everyone needs to submit it to admin. So we use Google Forms to submit all of our documents to admin. So you answer the couple questions, upload your doc, hit submit. Now, that means it goes into the KW cloud, and if we're ever audited, you're off the hook for having to provide this document, and the office takes care of it for you. So once you get your touring agreement signed, and we all know that we have to have something signed before we open any doors, we submit that signed PDF via the Google form to admin. And when I say admin, that's Kim and Alicia. Alicia is our operations manager. She is kind of the glue that keeps everything running, and Kim is her assistant. And together they make sure that they submit all your docs. They create your opportunity in Command. They submit all your docs for approval, for compliance. They communicate with you if something is needed. Kim can assist you with getting, say the lead-based paint is missing a signature. Kim can assist you in getting that, but with your instruction, she's always going to keep you in the loop because the agent is responsible for the file at the end of the day. And then they'll resubmit everything again for final approval. Kim also sends out, when you go under contract, reminders to insurance. That's what we were talking about for a few minutes this morning. Once she gets all of our contracts, she sends out the executed documents to all parties involved, and then sends out an introduction email to insurance. And that's a good reminder for you to, hey, I need to get working on that. But back to our steps and checklist. So you have a signed agreement, you submit it. You're working with your buyer. You're going to hear me say it all the time. Talk to the listing agent before you show a house. Get to know the buyer's lender and what they need before you start showing houses. Of course, we recommend meet, if it's a lead coming in, however you get the introduction, meet them at least once. That's where you're going to figure out what their timeline is, what they need, and how to move forward, because we don't want to be showing houses for 3 weeks and then find out that they are not eligible for financing. So that first blind date of a showing appointment is really a get to know me and how to come up with a game plan. So then you're going to talk to, once they like a house and you're going to dive in, you're going to make sure you talk to the listing agent. When I say talk to, I know a lot of times you call them, they don't answer, and then I text. But I always try to get them on the phone because it's a lot easier to build rapport and partner on a house to get us to the finish line with that, person-to-person conversation. The listing agents hate to answer the phone. I'm guilty of it as a listing agent too. It's a lot easier to text. And then you can always know specifically what you have or have not communicated. So once you get to the offer buying, or excuse me, the offer writing process, if I don't, as a buyer's agent, I don't spend a ton of time on running comps. However, this is my chance to remind you that it's good to know what the competition is in the neighborhood and good to know what you think the market value is of the neighborhood. Because if you, I don't know if Brittany's on here with us. I don't think she is. If you identify before you ever write the contract that, hey, my buyers love this house, but there could easily be an appraisal concern, it's a lot easier to have that conversation and get the ball rolling early on. So for example, there's 2 listings in the same neighborhood. Brittany's buyers love the neighborhood, but both listings are priced like $50,000 over all the sales in the neighborhood. So we actually have ended up negotiating. We made an offer on one, seller wasn't reasonable, made an offer on their backup house that they liked in the neighborhood too. We were close to going under contract, making inspection second to appraisal period. And then the other house wised up and said, hey, we're not getting any offers because we're listed too high. We better make this work. So they came back to us. And what we ended up doing is we don't expect it to appraise. And it's a Zillow home loans buyer, which is an extra bonus that Zillow's going to pay for that appraisal. So instead of doing the typical inspection period, then appraisal, 30-day financing contingency, then closing, what we did is first, I always try it. The seller usually doesn't agree because they won't agree to an unknown number. I always try to say, hey, I don't think this property is going to appraise. Have you and your seller discussed that? How reasonable are they going to be when it doesn't? Sometimes they understand that the only way to sell it is they're going to have to lower it to appraisal value. Sometimes they think you're ridiculous and don't understand what you're talking about. So that's kind of where we were at with this. These people think there won't be appraisal issue, but we're very confident there will be. So to limit the wasted time and the out-of-pocket expense to our buyer, what we did was we said our appraisal, we shrunk. Instead of doing a 30-day financing contingency, we did a 17-day financing contingency to appease the seller. But our plan is we are going to do the appraisal first. Once we get the appraisal back, then the inspection period starts. So if it doesn't appraise and if the seller isn't reasonable, my buyer can cancel due to lack of financing, get their escrow back, and they've never spent money on inspections. It's not common that you flip, but just keep in mind that when you have appraisal issues or questions about appraisal, that there are options as a way to mitigate some of the risk and stress for your buyer. Because we all know the more prepared and the more understanding your buyer is of what could go wrong and what to look out for when it happens, they don't panic and they recognize that you're looking out for them and you identified this as a potential problem early on, and it's not something they're going to blame you for, because we all know they love to do that if they don't understand. Hey, Garrett.
Hey, so I was just wondering, because I know this is different than just a regular appraisal contingency where most of the time this can happen later on. Because I know that we do have, because normally in my contracts, I put an appraisal contingency in, so it's an out if it doesn't appraise. So this is basically just to get it. So it's like the very first thing that we're going to do.
Yeah. So again, this is a house that this isn't a normal scenario. It's a house that we don't anticipate appraising. So the appraisal contingency, keep in mind, sometimes your buyers really want to see that document. And if it's further peace of mind, that's great. If you're unless your buyer is putting down a really large down payment, say 30% or more, the lender is always going to require an appraisal. Therefore, financing is always going to be required. Financing will always be contingent on the appraisal, so you're covered in your contract. The only time I try to avoid adding additional documents, because the more there is to sign, the more there is to discuss, the more questions it could raise with the seller or unsettling. Yeah, so your buyer's putting down 60%. So yes, in that scenario, I would 100% do the appraisal contingency. But your average 10% down, 5% down, 3% down, the lender is going to require an appraisal every single time. So the appraisal contingency is not needed. But if it is a large down payment, that's when we want to do that. Outside of that, all we're doing in the contract is we write it normally and we're saying in additional terms, I'm trying to think of how we worded it. Basically, inspection period begins upon a satisfactory appraisal value / purchase price. Something along those lines. So we're just putting it in additional terms to make the inspection period not start at the start of execution, but at a certain point during the contract, so it gives us time for appraisal. But that was the sidebar of, reasons that we go through conversations with the lender, conversations with the listing agent. We want to get a good idea for pricing. Usually it's not even an issue, but sometimes it is. So you want to be prepared for that. And it would be a lot harder to navigate it if you get under contract and then you start having problems. So the more we can address up front is usually a better guarantee that we're going to make it to closing. And if the seller is just completely unaware or refuses to negotiate and just seems extremely difficult, if you know your buyer has a strict timeline to get into a house, then you can confidently be like, hey, this could go either way. The seller seems unreasonable. I know you need to be in a house in 60 days, so we could be risking valuable time here. How much do you love this house? And then it's up to them. Then it's the buyer making the decision, not you. So when it all blows up, it was their choice to take the risk to eat up all of that time that they could have been looking for another house. So moving on, you want to discuss, as much as you can early on. We, and Garrett, since you're new to the team, you haven't heard this yet, but we always recommend trying for a 10-day inspection period. It just makes life easier. Of course, you have to negotiate shorter. It's perfect. Sometimes, we know you have to negotiate sometimes on the inspection timeline, but 10 days, just a good reminder that that's usually what we shoot for. And then of course, so I have our reminder here. You want to remind them what their deposit's going to be and when it's going to be due, because some people think that it may not be due till the end. They just don't know. They're new to the process, or they get paid every 2 weeks. And they're planning on using that next paycheck as their down payment. Well, that's not going to work if it's Tuesday and they don't get paid until the following Friday. So having the conversation of the timeline and where the money is going to help save a lot of headache as well. And then, of course, any inclusions and exclusions, so anything specific, when you're going through the properties, you want to make sure that the buyer's aware of what appliances or items definitely stay with the property that's listed in MLS, and you want to always make sure those make it to the contract, because if it's not in the contract, then the seller doesn't have to leave it. And so this may come about too, that the washer and dryer wasn't included, but the buyer's asking for it anyway. So having those conversations in advance and with the listing agent is going to help you tailor your offer to have better success at getting it accepted. Personalized offer letters, I don't do a lot. However, there are times that it's definitely going to benefit you. Deanne has a home where a family raised the listing agent communicated. She reached out to the listing agent. She found out about the seller. We learned that the seller had raised their family there for 30 plus years. And I think they might have been veterans themselves. I don't remember specifics, but getting a letter from Deanne's buyer saying, we're veterans, we want a home to raise our family in. We're not buying, a starter home. We're looking for a forever home to raise our family in. Even though we need a big price difference from what you're asking, that sealed the deal. That was enough to make them want to move forward and try, even though they knew they would have to do a lot of work to get the home VA ready. So sometimes this truly is a benefit. So just keep that in mind. If there's multiple offers, or your property, your offer isn't ideal for what the seller's wanting, but you found out that whatever it might be, an offer letter can be helpful. Okay, once you get to writing the offer process for our newer agents, and that's if you're 3 deals or less, you're gonna give me the heads up, hey, I'm working on an offer. That way we can coordinate to have ample time to review it together, for me to send you edits, and so I can have time to learn about your deal. I do need to update this list. I have done away with our agent manager. I plan to do away with this Google sheet simply because agents weren't using it much. So instead, my plan is you reach out to me, and I'll update this too so you guys have to reference. My plan is basically you're going to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm working on an offer. I'm going to need help, yada, yada. I'm going to want, and I'm just trying to get to my email so I can pull up an email. I'm going to need to know property address, asking price. And so a lot of times when you send me docs, I'll go ahead and pull it up in MLS. But if I'm at the baseball field with my kiddo on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night, because that's where I'll be tonight, I may not be able to. So the more information you can provide me is going to help me not put a kink in your timeline. So you're going to want to, if it's Thursday afternoon, your buyer says, okay, I love it, I want to make an offer. The conversations would look like, okay, great, I'm going to work on docs tonight. I'll have them to you by tomorrow morning, hopefully, for you to sign, and then we can plan on making the offer tomorrow. So that way they're not expecting documents in the next 2 hours. That said, you're going to reach out to the listing agent. Maybe you've already talked to them. Maybe you never were able to get them to respond. If they haven't responded, you're going to ask all the same things: age of the roof, age of the AC, age of the hot water heater. What do I need to know about this house? Is there anything not in MLS? And they may say, oh yeah, well, the shelves in the garage stay, or you probably saw the water stain in the master bedroom ceiling. The sellers are fixing that no matter what. And then it would be, okay, well, we're thinking about making an offer. My buyer's interested. When is the seller hoping to be moved out by? So you start asking questions to get the listing agent talking. That way you can find out what the seller's priorities are, because it's not always just make the most money. Sometimes it is an extended closing, or sometimes they don't want to move items out of the house. So they want someone who will just take all of their crap because they're elderly and they can't afford to hire help or whatever it might be. So having that conversation with the listing agent before you write the offer is beneficial, because then you can go back to your buyer and say, okay, this is what I know about the seller. They're needing a 60-day close. They think they're getting another offer. If we can be negotiable with their extended closing, then most likely they would choose you over the other offer if we're coming in meeting all of their other needs, whatever it might be. It is a buyer's market, I would say, right now, but there's a lot of negotiating in taking place right now. Sellers are paying concessions, but you're pretty much going to have to prove to them that your buyer needs it. So there's going to be a lot of give and take in your negotiations between the buyer and seller. It's not a clear cut, the buyer throws everything at it just to get the seller to agree. There's a lot of back and forth right now. So like this, what I mean by that is the sellers understand that they're going to have to negotiate some, but so do the buyers. So what I need to know, circling back, is property address, asking price, your buyer's max approval, and what they want to offer. Because that tells us a couple things. Either the house is listed for $265, they're pre-approved for $265, and they need $10,000 in concessions. Well, we know the seller just hit the market yesterday. They're going to expect asking price or close to it, but there's no way you can go in at asking price and expect $10,000 in concessions and compensation. Or it might be that, okay, we can do $265, but they've been on the market a month or so now, so they would be willing to do concessions. But if the seller came back and said, if you have to have $10,000 in order to close, it's going to have to be, the purchase price is going to have to be increased. Well, if their max pre-approval is $265, then we're done. There's nothing we can do about that. So all of that we need to know ahead of time. One question is concerns about the house in that list. I'm going to go through and I'll send this to you guys so you can send it back to me when you know, but let's take a look at this. This will be a quick way for you to see. And then I'll narrow down the questions. If it's virtual versus in person, those are two totally different conversations we have. If it's in person, we know that they see the scuffed baseboards. We know that they see that the appliances look kind of run down. But if it's virtual, they just see the big picture. So if I'm doing a virtual tour, I will zoom in on the crack in the fireplace bricks, the staining on the ceiling, because I want to make sure that they are going in eyes wide open. I don't want them to think that the home looks like picture perfect from MLS and then get here on final walkthrough day and realize the home is a typical 1985 built home. So you want to be, this matters how you approach it. Did you submit this? It's a good reminder for you and to make sure I know that you're safe on compliance issues. Along those same lines, I want to know what your buyer's needs are, because if your buyer needs a house ASAP and they're flexible with budget, that's going to help us in negotiating. If we know their budget's super tight and we know that they're at the top of their DTI, they don't have a lot of extra income. If we're making an offer on an older home that needs some work, this is going to be a red flag for me that, hey, is your buyer truly aware of the risks going into this house? So these are good questions that we'll discuss, because I'm not only here to just fact check your contracts and make sure you check the right box. I want to make sure that we're meeting our buyers' needs and that we're doing everything we can in their best interest, because that is our job at the end of the day. Reminder to talk about inspections, appraisals, and closings with them. To talk about the contract to close process with them. That makes it much smoother. But getting down to what I need to know, what are they wanting to offer? What are they wanting to put down as a deposit? What their desired budget is. So just because they want to offer $230, they may be willing to go up to $250, but they might really be pre-approved up to $265. And they may just be trying to get a deal and losing focus on the goal is to find the right home, not just beating the seller out. Loan type is important because we need to make sure the house is going to fit the needs of our loan type. So in order for me to move on to other questions, I got to fill it in, which I should have been doing as we were talking. All of these should be yeses, actually. So I'm probably doing away with this because not everyone was using it and it was getting kind of hectic, but we'll keep moving forward. Just know that there's information about your deal that I want to know to make sure that we're covering all our bases. And even your loan type, that's going to tell me that, oh yeah, they have to have the rider or whatever it may be. So we talked earlier about getting property specific loan estimates. That is a huge tool in negotiating and in preparing your buyer and yourself for knowing how to find the right home. I'd asked about max pre-approval. What's the required lender down payment? Because again, if they want to, you need to know what their required lender down payment is. Usually you can find it from the pre-approval, but they may want to put more down. So that gives you an opportunity to discuss with your listing agent, hey, they're well qualified, they have extra cash, they're ready to go. And then of course, closing cost assistance, that's something we need to know before we ever write the offer. So the property type is something else that I need to know, because if it's a single family home, great. But if it's a mobile home and you didn't tell the lender it's a mobile home, that's an issue because that's a different type of loan. If it's a condo, there's different documents we're going to need. So property type, we're going to need to know. Again, a reminder to talk to the listing agent. And then also when we're having those listing agent conversations, what is the commission? What is the seller willing to pay you? And then who's paying it? So this means when you've reached out to the listing agent, you can say, what commission is the seller offering? Typically, the listing agent will say, well, it's negotiable based on the deal. The higher the purchase price, the more they're willing to consider paying. However, usually I feel like lately sellers have been, no matter what, trying for 2.5% or 2%. So if that's the case, you're going to go back to your buyer and see if there's a potential for them to pay the difference or at least contribute. We're going to, sometimes you might end up just accepting what the seller's offering because you know your buyer doesn't have any extra cash to bring to the closing table. Sometimes it's a combination of who's paying what. And keep in mind that through these conversations, you can reach out to me and I can help you navigate it at any time. Having a feel for where everyone's mindset is at is going to be helpful when you're preparing your offer. So it gives us an idea of what pushback you're going to get. Because if you tell me that multiples offers exist and there's a deadline, well, I know, hey, I need to be as quickly and efficiently as I possibly can in getting this review back to you so you can get it in, because time is of the essence. But if you send it to me at 9 o'clock at night and there's, they want offers by noon tomorrow, well, most likely I will usually see it, but I may not. There's some nights that I may not see it. So us communicating ahead of time is important. Also, if the seller's really firm, if the seller seems motivated, if the buyer wants to start too low, letting me know these things helps gear the conversation in helping you navigate. How long the listing has been on the market is a really good indicator of how we're going to tackle negotiation. And I had this conversation with our buyer when I'm doing that initial showing. So it's been on the market 12 days. I know they've had a handful of showings. They're not going to be willing to come off the price a lot, but if we could get an offer in, I think that they are ready to sell, because the seller says they need, they wanted to be moved into their new home by April or whatever it is, or next month. So we may be able to come down a couple $1,000s, or you need concessions. They're probably going to be more likely to give you your concessions because it's already been on the market for a month and the listing agent says they haven't gotten any offers. So the more information you know, again, it's easier to give your buyer advice and then navigate the deal. So as I'm going through this, I'm thinking that I really shouldn't do away with it, because it's really hard for me to help you guys if I don't know all the pieces. So if you guys come to me with the asking price is $320 and the neighborhood market value is $325 and your buyer wants to offer $300,000, then I'm going to say, have you had the conversation with your buyer that that's unrealistic? And you can start there, but we don't really want to waste anyone's time, especially yours. But the way I put it to my buyer is, hey, I don't want to waste your time. Homes in this neighborhood usually sell within 0.5% of the asking price or 1% of the asking price, or homes in this neighborhood for the last 3 months have sold for the asking price. If we start too low, we're just wasting time that we could be finding another house, or we're allowing for more time that another offer could come in and us not even be considered. So good conversations to have. Then if your buyer still wants to start too low, you're not going to waste time putting it in writing. You're going to call the listing agent, give a verbal offer, get a good feel for what the seller's reaction will be to that. Usually either the listing agent's going to laugh and say, no way, there's no way they would even consider under X amount of dollars, or they may say, you know what, we've been on the market 2 months, write it up. So again, you can go back to the offer to your buyer and say, hey, I talked to the seller. There's no way they would go for $300,000. I think if we put it in writing at maybe $310,000, we could get them considering it and maybe get a good counter. But it's all going to be dependent on the combination of what's going on with the house, the days of the market, are there other offers, etc. Because what I don't want you doing is just writing offers blindly and submitting them and hoping for the best. We want to know if we're writing an offer that we're going to be able to get it accepted and going to be able to get it closed. There's nothing worse than getting 2 or 3 weeks in on a deal, or an agent getting 2 or 3 weeks in on a deal, or even the week a few days before closing, and then they can't get insurance. There's something wrong with the appraisal, yada, yada. Well, it's an FHA lender. This house, we knew all day long would never go FHA. We never should have been looking at it from the start, whatever it might be. But figuring it out early on is always going to be best case scenario. The age of the home alone is going to tell me a lot as far as what questions have you asked. If it's a 1950s home, when was it last remodeled? Has it been fully replumbed? What's the electrical like? The quality of the remodel, and so on and so on. Utilities are important because if your buyer has very limited income and it's a septic tank property, I want to make sure that you've discussed with them that, hey, this home that you want to make an offer on is on a septic tank. In every 5 years or so, you're going to need to pay about $600 to get it pumped out. This home is 40 years old with an original septic tank. 2 years from now, if your septic goes out, you're looking at a $10,000, $15,000 expense. Maybe that's not something that's ever going to be feasible for them. Or it could be as simple as, hey, this house has a septic tank. I want you to know that during our inspection period, it's very important that you get the septic tank inspected as well. Home inspection reports usually $350. The septic tank inspection is going to be an additional $600 to $700 on top of that. So be prepared that you're going to have about $1,000 in inspections on top of that deposit that's going to be needed. So you need to discuss these things with your buyer, because their specific scenario is going to say, oh, maybe we need to rule out looking at homes on septic entirely. Maybe we only need to search homes and look at homes that are on sewer. And sometimes it's not something that that your buyers ever really cared about or thought too much about until you start laying it out for them as far as anticipated costs and what to expect. Same with an HOA. Sometimes the HOA is going to be too high and bump their debt to income ratio. So when you're having that initial conversation with the listing agent ahead of time, you may ask them, you may find out that, okay, they're approved for up to 265. However, that's assuming it's a reasonable, normal HOA of $100 a month, and that's what's normal for the area. If it's a home that's at 265, but the HOA is $300 a month, that may completely price them out of being eligible for this house. And then it also tells us, hey, we need the contract to be contingent on additional HOA documents. Same goes for if it's in a 55 and up neighborhood. This is a trigger that, hey, during the closing process, we're going to have additional documents and they're most likely going to have to get approved. Oh, hey, by the way, how old is my buyer? Conversations to have in advance. And then if we're working on the offer, but we expect there to be a roof or we expect there to be an AC problem, again, it's really helpful to go ahead and tackle that up front with the listing agent. So you and the listing agent can be on the same page, because your goal and their goal is the same, to get the house sold. So how can we work together to make that happen? There are crappy realtors out there and people you don't like to work with. However, the listing agent, if you can establish that y'all are not in competition, that you have the same end goal, it's going to make that a smoother process. Because say the home does need a new roof and this, you could write your offer contingent on the seller putting on a new roof, or you could write your offer with whatever it might be, $8,000 credit to go towards the new AC. And then it's more realistic to meet the needs. And it may be that the seller won't agree to it initially, but you're setting up the conversation for when that inspection report comes. It's going to be a lot easier to get the seller on board and willing to take care of those items because you've already put that bug in their ear that, hey, I'm anticipating X, Y, and Z. You may not want to believe it yet, but oh, sure enough, the inspection report comes and then they see, okay, we really, in order to sell the house, we are going to have to work on these problems. So again, the sooner you're having the conversations about concerns, the better. Did you confirm legal description, parcel ID? These are just basic questions. I want to make sure that you're being thorough with the information when you're writing your offers. And then more about, I left that out, but we're getting short on time, so I'm going to bypass this conversation. So keep in mind that in the beginning of where's my sheet? So in the beginning, the Fortify process is you submit through a Google form your touring agreement. In the beginning of the writing and offer process, you get with me. There's going to be a lot of questions we want answers to make sure we're writing a strong offer. There's links to accessing DocuSign. You can log in directly to DocuSign. You don't have to go through Command. Show you that real quick. You go to DocuSign, you go to login. You log in with your KW Command login info. You get to this, you go up to your profile and go down to switch to rooms. And you may learn of another way to navigate, but this is the way I know as far as getting to the rooms quickly. I have my dashboard, and then I always like to go to this view. I like this rooms view because this is what it looks like when we used to have to go through Command. And then you go into your file. I use Transaction Desk a lot, so I really only have some sample ones in here. But just keep in mind, it makes your life a lot simpler to work directly in DocuSign. And here we go. Sorry, I keep forgetting what tab we're on. Then, so we're working together. You've let me know that you're writing an offer. You send it to me. I look at it. We may schedule a Google Meet because it may be something you've never worked on. It may be vacant land or commercial or whatever it might be, a duplex with weird HOA rules. We could schedule a Google Meet. It may be that we just email, text, and phone call back and forth until everything's situated. You make the offer. We recommend you use this language, and this is in Agent Resources as well. We want your offer email to be easy to see the main details for the listing agent, and then we want it to be clear that, hey, Fortify team handles a lot of deals. We know what we're doing. We're going to make this as smooth as possible for you. So we recommend, I want all of you using that verbiage. Then once you get under contract, if you're in Florida, you're then going to send those executed documents back to me for your first 3 deals at a minimum. I'm always here to review anything else. If you're in Texas, then you're sending your docs to Eric, working with him for approval. If you're in Ohio, I know some of you have to get off the Zillow meeting in just a second, or get off of this for the Zillow meeting. But then your team lead or me reviews your documents, make sure we have everything. And then keep in mind, you're still not going to Command. You as the Fortify agent really never have to go to Command. Then you submit this Google form with all of your info about the deal, and then upload your executed documents. And this is what triggers admin to start their job. So we want this done within 24 hours of execution, because if you get this done quickly, You're not having to send the letter, the updated the lender, the updated contract. You're not having to send the listing agent the info. You're not having to reach out to title on your own. Kim will do that for you. So then you can start your next process, which is scheduling inspections, reminding your buyer about when their escrow is due, what their down payment, when their deposits due, and then what their inspections expenses are going to be. And then you get all that out of the way and you go back to working your other deals. Kim and Alicia will be communicating with title, lender, listing agent, everybody on the back end to handle the paperwork. So that is our process in a nutshell. If you guys have questions for me, I'm happy to stay on. I'm sorry we went a little over. I know some of you may have to hop off for Zillow. I know some Florida folks probably have that Zillow meeting. So if you do hop off, so be it, but I'm happy to stay if you have questions. Garrett?
I joined a little late, but could you show me how to find the Google Drive?
Yeah. So I will drop. If you're in your having a moment, if you're in your KW Gmail, that's what I wanted to go to. You can come up here and go to Google Drive. And I've shared it with all of you, the link. I'm going to, I'll drop the direct link to, this is to the Florida Agent Resources. Ohio and Texas has their own, but I'm going to drop the link again. It would have been in that welcome email, but I'll put it in the messages. So I recommend opening that link and starring it. So when I go into my Google Drive, I can go to Starred and get to Agent Resources really quickly. But I also have added that link to my bookmark tabs. So, because I'm in and out of it all day long, as you guys are asking for an example or I'm sending you a link on training, whatever it might be. And I want you guys to utilize it. That's what it's created for. So I strongly recommend saving the link as a bookmark so you can get to it quickly, adding it to your Starred. That way you always have it. And then within that document, we were in working, or excuse me, within that folder, we were in working with buyers. And the buyer agent steps is the list I was originally walking through, just so we had a visual as we were discussing it. I'm going to drop this as well in our chat. And then one important thing, so we talked about the Fortified Google Forms. In the main Agent Resources folder, towards the bottom, is Fortify Google Forms, required forms and instructions. So here's the link to all of them. And as you see in my bookmarks tab, I have most of them up here as well. I would recommend opening them up, saving them to your bookmarks. So when it comes time that you get an executed showing agreement, it's real easy to open up the internet and get to it. So you're not having to search for it in your email every time. Now keep in mind, my Friday meeting wrap-up emails do include those links, but that's still not something you need to look for. So I always recommend adding it to your bookmarks. My bookmarks, I have email, the Drive, Google Meet, because we're in Google Meets all the time, MLS, Agent Resources, Command, even though I'm not in Command often, only when you guys are under contract and if a problem arises and I need to go in and look at something on the back end. Zillow Premier. I use Transaction Desk. I actually, since I've been training everyone, I'm starting to be more partial to DocuSign, if I'm going to be honest. Our Redfin platform and then our Google Forms. So you want to be prepared to have access to all the things you need to make life easy. Having to dig for the forms or whatever it might be is going to slow you down and be real cumbersome. So set yourself up for success and get those sorted. But again, you can go to Agent Resources, Fortify Google Forms, and you're going to have a link to all of them. And then I have reminders of why it's due and when to turn it in. So we looked at the new deal because we were talking today as though we're a buyer's agent with an executed buyer purchase agreement. But if you're a listing agent and you have a new listing, it's the same thing. There's a Google form specific to submitting your new executed listing agreements to admin as well. What other questions do we have? Sarah, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, when can we get together to talk about the lease to buy?
Yeah. Do you want to stay on after this or do you need to hop on Zillow?
I need to do the Zillow thing, but yeah,
Okay.
this person is like blowing me up every night, and I keep trying to I keep messaging you late because she keeps messaging me late, and I'm like
Yeah.
trying to
Okay.
get it, and I keep kind of like pushing her aside, but it sounds like she's like
Right.
last night she was saying she'll buy a ticket tomorrow to see the house and put in an offer. So
Okay. So yeah, you'll be on Zillow from 11 to noon. And then I just want to make sure there's not anything else. I thought I saw something else pop up for later. Okay. Can you want to say 12:30? We'll do a Google Meet and knock it out.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Yep. I'll send you an invite.
All right, bye.
Bye. Are there any other questions for me before we hop off for the day? Oh, I think that's it. I'm all by myself.